why the universe doesn't let chosen ones peak early, only after 30. There's a reason why your 20s feel like a storm you can't control, a storm filled with questions that have no answers, pain that doesn't seem to serve a purpose, and a sense that even though you feel something powerful inside you, the world doesn't see it yet. It's like the universe knows you're capable of so much more, but it keeps holding you back. And if you've ever asked yourself, why haven't I peaked yet? Or why does it feel like I'm living in potential but not fully stepping into it? Then you're not alone. You're not late. You're not lost. You're just being shaped. Because the universe doesn't let chosen ones peak early, not because it's cruel, but because it's precise. Because the mission you carry can't be entrusted to someone who hasn't been through the fire, who hasn't been forged in truth, who hasn't had every false part of them stripped away. You see, the universe doesn't operate like this world does. The world wants you to succeed fast, to be seen young, to rise before you've rooted. But the universe is different. It protects its most powerful messengers. It hides them. It delays them. It lets them wander while others run ahead. Not because they're not gifted, but because they are. And those gifts are sacred. They're not meant to be rushed. They're meant to be revealed only after the soul has matured enough to carry them without distortion, without arrogance, without attachment.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
In your 20s, you're still remembering who you are. You're still shedding the layers of who you thought you had to be. You're still learning through contrast, through relationships that break you open, through jobs that drain your spirit, through choices that look good from the outside but feel empty inside. All of that is part of the design. It's not a detour, it's the curriculum. Because until you know what's not you, you can't fully step into what is. You have to touch the edges of your own illusion. You have to live through the lies you inherited. You have to try on identities that don't fit just to find the one that does. Have you ever wondered why the people who make the biggest impact often didn't rise until later in life? It's not coincidence, it's cosmic timing. The universe waits until your inner world is aligned enough to support the weight of your outer visibility. It waits until your ego no longer needs to be fed by applause. It waits until you've failed enough to be humbled, loved enough to be softened, and lost enough to be found. Because when chosen ones rise too early, before the foundation is set, they crumble. And the universe will not risk that. Not with you. There's something sacred about the age 30. Not as a number, but as a vibration. Around this time, the soul begins to crystallize. The noise starts to fade. You stop chasing things just to prove your worth. You begin to return to yourself. The clarity that felt like a whisper in your 20s becomes a voice. The false dreams begin to fall away. And what's left is something real, something rooted, something unshakable. That's when the universe begins to open the path, not because you finally earned it, but because you finally became who you were always meant to be. Think about the sacred traditions throughout history. In many cultures, true initiation didn't begin until after 30. Why? Because something in the human spirit needs time to be broken and rebuilt. Not once, but many times. And each breaking is not a setback. It's a sacred invitation to dig deeper, to let go, to surrender to a higher intelligence operating through your life. And most of us resist it. We want to rise now, we want to be seen now, But the universe is wiser than our impatience. It knows that power without purity is dangerous. Influence without integrity is hollow. So it delays us. It delays you, not to hurt you, but to protect the gift you are. Let me ask you something that might shake you a little. What if the universe has been keeping you hidden because the version of you that would have risen before 30 wasn't the one that could sustain it? What if your 20s were never about success but about refinement? What if all the pain, all the confusion, all the waiting was actually grace in disguise? That's not easy to hear, is it? Especially when you've been doing the work, especially when you've been trying to live with intention, to heal, to grow, to serve. But here's the truth. The universe doesn't operate on effort. It operates on energy, and energy doesn't lie. You can't fake alignment. You can't pretend to be ready. You either are or you're not. And when you are, everything opens effortlessly because the path will recognize you. It will match your frequency. It will pull you forward like a river pulling a leaf, not because you're forcing it, but because you are it. So if you're under 30 and still waiting, I want you to hear this with your whole heart. You are not behind. You are being built. You're being prepared for a peak that isn't temporary but timeless. You're being rooted so deeply that when your time comes, you won't just rise, you'll stay. You won't burn out. You won't collapse under the weight of it. You'll carry it with grace, with clarity, with power that doesn't need to shout because its presence alone shifts rooms. And if you're over 30 and still unsure, still searching, still waiting for that moment when it all clicks, you haven't missed it, you're not late. You're right on time. Because the timing of your rise isn't about your age, it's about your readiness. And readiness has nothing to do with how long you've been alive, and everything to do with how deeply you've been willing to die to who you thought you were. So now I ask you, what part of you is still trying to peak before it's time? What part of you is still rushing, still comparing, still doubting the divine precision of your path? And what would happen if you finally surrendered to the truth that your rise is not late, it's legendary? The sacred delay that turns wounds into wisdom. There's a mechanism in the universe that doesn't operate according to logic, time, or societal milestones. It works on energy. It works on readiness, and it works on truth. This is why many of the most powerful chosen ones are delayed, not denied. Delayed so deeply and so deliberately that it almost feels cruel. But that delay is sacred. It's not punishment. It's transformation. Because the delay is where your wounds are turned into wisdom, and without that process, the rise would be hollow. It would be performative. It would have no soul. You might not realize it yet, but everything that has felt like a closed door, every failure, every disappointment, every season of waiting has been a controlled demolition of your false self. The version of you that would have chased validation, the version of you that would have needed applause to feel worthy, the version of you that might have used your gifts to feed your ego instead of heal the world. That version had to crack. And not just once, over and over again, because the light that's meant to move through you can't be filtered through an unhealed vessel. It can't be distorted by pride, fear, or unresolved trauma. That's why you were delayed. Because your mission is too big to be carried by anything less than your truest self. In your 20s, you were still collecting wounds, and most of them didn't make sense at the time. You probably asked questions like, Why is this happening to me? Or what did I do wrong? You wanted to be seen, but the universe made sure you were invisible. You wanted to lead, but everything crumbled when you tried. You wanted to speak, but your voice often felt blocked. That wasn't bad luck. That was the divine saying, "Not yet. You're not ready." Because to be ready isn't about talent or intelligence. It's about purity, not moral purity, but spiritual clarity. The clarity that comes only after your wounds have been held, healed, and integrated so deeply that they no longer control you, but empower you. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful teachers, healers, or leaders don't scream to be heard? They don't try to convince you of their worth. They carry a quiet power, a stillness, a gravity. That's what the sacred delay creates. It creates a weight in you, an energetic density that people can feel. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. And it only comes when you've sat long enough in the pain, in the silence, in the spaces where nobody clapped for you and you had to clap for yourself. That's where wisdom is born. That's where power is forged. And that wisdom? It's the reason some people don't peak until after 30. Because it takes time. It takes fire. It takes breakdowns, heartbreak, loneliness, and the kind of self-inquiry that rips your identity apart. It takes walking away from everything that looks like success but feels like self-betrayal. It takes saying no to what's almost right so you can say yes to what's fully aligned. And that kind of discernment doesn't come fast. It doesn't come cheap. It comes through the sacred delay. But here's the most beautiful part. When the delay is over and the peak begins, it's not a peak that fades. It's not a temporary moment of success. It's a sustained, soul-deep flow. You start to move in alignment with something bigger than you. You stop chasing timing and start trusting rhythm. You stop worrying about being seen and start focusing on being clear. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And when you do that, something magical happens. Life begins to rise with you. The right people appear. The doors open. The path lights up, not because you forced it, but because you became it. So let me ask you something that might change your life if you answer honestly. What is the universe still trying to teach you through delay? What wound is still asking to be held? What lesson are you resisting because you want to skip ahead? What truth are you avoiding because it would require you to let go of who you thought you had to be? The delay is not the enemy. It's the divine pause. The fertile soil, the cocoon, and if you allow it to do its work, it will deliver you into a version of yourself that no early peak could have ever created. A version of you that is unshakable. A version of you that speaks with fire and tenderness. A version of you that doesn't just carry wisdom, but is wisdom. The sacred delay is not holding you back. It's holding you together long enough for your soul to become whole. And that is the most powerful preparation of all. The ego death that unlocks destiny. There is a point in every chosen one's path where the delay becomes unbearable, not because nothing is happening, but because something inside is dying. It's subtle at first, a restlessness, a discomfort, a sense that the things that used to excite you now feel hollow. The ambitions you chased with burning passion begin to lose their grip. The identities you once wore with pride feel like costumes. And in the silence that follows, a deeper question begins to rise. Who am I without all of this? That question is the gateway, because no chosen one steps into their true destiny without first facing the slow, sacred death of their ego. You can't carry divine purpose with a fractured identity. You can't channel higher truth while still clinging to masks. The universe knows this. That's why the delay stretches longer. That's why the pressure increases. That's why the things you used to rely on start to fall apart. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being peeled. Every layer of ego that stood between you and your soul's mission must dissolve. The part of you that wanted success to feel important, the part of you that sought validation to feel worthy, the part of you that used your gifts to be seen instead of to serve, that part must bow. And the bowing doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in countless small ones. When you choose truth over comfort, humility over recognition, alignment over applause. In your 20s, the ego is often still leading, not because you're selfish, but because you're human. You're still figuring out who you are. You're still trying to be somebody, and that's okay. It's part of the journey. But the universe has no interest in giving you the weight of a divine calling while the ego is still at the wheel. Because ego turns missions into performance. It turns service into self-promotion. It turns wisdom into branding. And the universe is not in the business of building icons. It's in the business of awakening souls. So it waits. It waits for the moment when your ego cracks open and your essence begins to pour through. That moment is terrifying. It feels like you're losing your grip on everything. Your goals dissolve, your motivations shift. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. But this isn't collapse, it's convergence. It's the moment when the false self begins to fall away and the real self starts reclaiming its space. And in that space, something extraordinary begins to happen. You begin to feel peace without needing proof. You begin to feel powerful without needing permission. You begin to feel called, not by a title, not by a platform, not by success, but by the quiet rhythm of your own soul. This is the ego death that unlocks destiny. It's not about losing everything. It's about losing the illusion that you ever needed anything other than your truth. It's about remembering that your worth was never in your performance. Your purpose was never in your achievements. It was in your presence, in your ability to stay rooted in love, clarity, and service, no matter what the world says. That's when the universe begins to move. When you no longer need to rise to feel enough. When you're willing to rise only if it serves something bigger than you. And this is why the universe waits until after 30. Because by then, if you've truly done the work, the ego has softened. It's not gone, but it's no longer driving. You've failed enough to be humble. You've succeeded enough to know it doesn't fulfill you. You've been loved and left, praised and ignored, and none of it defines you anymore. What defines you now is something deeper, something ancient, something unshakable, and from that place, you can be trusted. Trusted with influence, trusted with power, trusted with purpose that can alter lives. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, not because you're trying to impress, but because truth is all you know now. You no longer chase destiny, you become it. You no longer seek the path, you are the path. And from that vibration, everything changes. People feel you, opportunities find you, the mission unfolds in ways you could never have planned, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. So now I ask you something few ever dare to ask themselves. What identity are you still clinging to that's keeping you from your destiny? What part of you still needs to be seen or praised or validated before it can feel whole? And what would happen, truly, if you let that part die? Because on the other side of that death is your greatest life, your truest expression, not filtered through ego but flowing from essence. That's what the universe has been waiting for. Not your perfection, not your performance, just your presence, raw, real, and ready to serve. The rise that cannot be reversed. There is a rise that looks like success, and then there is a rise that feels like home. Most people chase the first. It's flashy, it's fast, it comes with validation, numbers, attention, and it fades just as quickly. But the rise that cannot be reversed, that's different. That's sacred. That's the kind of rise the universe prepares you for in silence over decades, through delays that feel like denial. It's the rise of the chosen ones, the ones who didn't peak early because their purpose was too deep, too heavy, too high frequency to be rushed, and when it comes, it doesn't just elevate you, it anchors you. This rise isn't built on momentum, it's built on meaning. It doesn't come from pushing or proving, it comes because you became the kind of vessel that could not only hold light, but be light. Your rise becomes inevitable the moment you no longer need it. That's the final paradox. Once you stop trying to be seen, you become unmissable. Once you let go of needing to lead, people begin to follow. Not because of your image, your status, or your strategy, but because of your because you've become the embodiment of what others are still seeking. And here's the truth most people will never understand. This rise is not something you manufacture. It's something you receive. It's an effect, not a cause. It's the natural outcome of years, sometimes lifetimes, of soul work. The kind of work that doesn't show up on social media, the kind of work that no one claps for, the kind of work that happens when you're crying in your car, praying in your room, or sitting in silence while your entire life falls apart. It's the work of becoming. And once that work is done, the rise begins to move through you like breath. Effortless, organic. That's why the universe doesn't let chosen ones peak early, because the rise meant for you can't be faked. It can't be replicated. It can't be taught in a course or downloaded in a strategy. It's encoded in your soul, and it only activates when you're ready. Not ready as in perfect, ready as in true, ready as in surrendered. And once that readiness hits a critical mass, something shifts. The fog clears, the resistance dissolves, and you begin to move not with force, but with flow. From this space you no longer fear falling. Why? Because you've already fallen. You've fallen out of illusions. You've fallen through ego. You've fallen into truth. And when you rise from that, nothing can touch you, because there's nothing left to take. You're not rising to gain anything, you're rising to give. That's the rise that cannot be reversed, because it's not tied to outcome. It's tied to essence, and essence doesn't expire, it only expands. So, if you're still waiting, if you're over 30 and wondering when your time will come, maybe this is it. Not the time for the world to crown you, but the time for you to claim yourself. To stop playing small, to stop hiding behind perfectionism and fear, to stop rehearsing your truth and finally speak it. Because your rise isn't somewhere out there. It's been inside you all along, waiting for you to say yes. Not to the world's version of success, but to your soul's version of service. And if you're under 30, wondering why life feels like delay after delay, I want you to remember this. You're not behind. You're being aligned. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. And the deeper the foundation, the higher the rise. Trust that. Honor that. Let it shape you. Because when your rise comes, and it won't just elevate your life. It will awaken others. It will ripple through generations. It will shift the field. And the best part? You won't need to hold on to it because it won't be something separate from you. It will be who you are. So I'll leave you with one final soul-deep question. Are you ready to rise in a way that can never be reversed? Because it's no longer about who you're becoming, but about who you've finally remembered you've always been. This is your time, this is your frequency, this is your rise.